Welcome to Venture in the South. These are the stories of innovation and success in the southern U.S. that make money, have fun, and do good.
Welcome back to Venture in the South, a podcast about angel investing and startup companies in the southeastern United States. On this week's episode, I'm your host, Paul, and I'm here with the CEO of a Venture South portfolio company, MP Cloud Technologies, and I'm intending to grill Rob Robrigues on his background and what brought him to what he's doing today and learn a few lessons about what effective startups, although MP Cloud is far from a startup at this point, what effective startups can do to grow successfully here. So, Rob, thank you. Well, thank you for being on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you asking us to participate.
Yeah, looking forward to learning a few things from you. Maybe you could give us the potted history of MP Cloud, because it is a company with some history. So maybe just walk us through that.
Well, it's an interesting backstory, Paul. So I got my start more on the clinical side of healthcare, but always had a secondary interest in revenue cycle management and how claims got paid. I previously operated a ambulance company, and that was very important to me to make sure that organization got paid. Made an exit from that organization, and really wanted to continue my career more in the revenue cycle management space, and worked in that for quite a few years, mostly doing consulting with other customers. I'm segueing into how the company came to be is that having used every other competitor solution on the marketplace, really the standard entrepreneur playbook of building a better mousetrap, that I really felt that the solutions that were available on the market were very labor intensive, required lots of manual data entry, and I wanted to find a way to do it better.
Okay, got it. It's a well-trodden path to experience a problem and go solve it. So I'm glad that you walked along that path. So what is so hard about revenue cycle management for ambulance companies?
Well, I think, getting paid in healthcare, in any healthcare related field, is very difficult. The regulations from the government thrown up by the problems with health insurance companies. I like to joke, what's the 4 rules of health insurance? Don't pay, don't pay, don't pay, pay as little as possible. Various insurance companies have different requirements of what they want in a claim, what they need to see on a claim to adjudicate it properly. That really required a human being being able to remember all of those little nuanced things across. And you'd see people that would have 500 sticky notes around their computer monitor to remind them of the various things that they need to do. And basically what we have done is taken all those sticky notes and put it into the intelligence of our software, so the user doesn't have to remember all those little one-off things, and the software does it for them.
Okay, got it. And so it helps facilitate that whole payment process, reduces the number of disallowed claims, and just gets the process done faster.
Faster, with less people, and more efficiently, more accurately.
Have you been doing that?
So we just had our 7th year anniversary.
Okay, got it. And did you build the software from scratch, or did you
well, that's kind of an
assets?
Interesting story as well. So when I was doing consulting work, I became a customer of this software when it was under a predecessor company. Unfortunately for them, they had 80% of their revenue tied up in one customer that they lost in an M&A cycle, and they ended up in Chapter 11. So June of 2018, I stood on the courthouse steps in Austin, Texas, and made a bid and won. And, while I was a fairly successful operator at that point, and certainly a subject matter expert in healthcare claims and EMS specifically, I'm not ashamed to admit that that was a lot like the dog catching the car. What do you do now?
Yeah. Okay. And so what did you do then?
Well, it was
together?
interesting. This is probably a little plug for tech incubators, is that 2 blocks away, coincidentally, from the courthouse in Austin, Texas, where this bankruptcy sale took place, I went over to a place called the Capital Factory, which pretty well-known tech incubator in the Texas area, and walked in and said, I just bought a software company and I need help. And, it was a really great experience. I really, meshed myself into that culture. I ended up moving to Austin, Texas for this opportunity to pursue it. They had office hours every day for various other entrepreneurs who were paying it forward and giving it back to share their experiences and their thoughts. Plus, you're around other founders. So for me, was a great experience because I got to be friends with colleagues that were running their own businesses, and most of them were super technical guys, right? Now, here I am, an operator. So I would have a Rolodex of folks that I could reach out to when I had a question, and they can ask me questions. So, frequently I would be reaching out and saying, hey, my developer says the flex capacitor is broken, and what do I do about that? And he'd be like, don't worry about it. This is the things, these are the questions you ask. But conversely, they would end up calling me and saying, geez, we got our, the application to renew our business insurance and all these questions. And I don't even know how to answer them. And I was able to help them in that business operation sense. So it was a pretty symbiotic relationship.
Okay, got it. Great. So in that environment, presumably you raised some money too, and some time went by as you redeveloped the product and went and sold it to a new set of users.
Yeah, that's correct. We took our first institutional capital in June of 2019 from a VC firm that I met from being part of the Capital Factory in Austin.
Okay, got it. But then at some point, you became a truly Southeastern company, I guess, depending on your definition of Southeast. So how did that happen?
I really wanted to be back in the Carolinas. I'm originally from Charleston. I looked at going to Charleston, but I think anybody who's familiar with Charleston will say that the price of real estate's really very expensive. Price of employment's very expensive. So I thought, I'd always wanted to live or try to live up in the upstate of South Carolina, still close to the beach, close to the mountains, and did some searching around, but Spartanburg was a really good fit. And, we made that transition in 2021 and came to Spartanburg.
And here you are in downtown Spartanburg.
Yep.
Okay, great. So could you just give us a sense for how big the business is at this point? How many customers or
Yeah. So
insurance claims you deal
today
with?
our software touches about 140 different EMS agencies across the United States that rely on it to do their billing. And we're from basically the Northeast down to the Southeast and all the way out to California and all parts in between, and really looking to grow our market share here over the next couple of years.
Okay, got it. And do you get paid per claim that you process, or is it a different model?
We try to follow a standard SaaS model of, kind of tiered subscription pricing, but yes, loosely based around a per claim fee.
Obviously, a topic of conversation at the moment is how AI companies are putting all software businesses out of business. So how are you using AI and adapting to that new environment?
Well, we are currently pretty far along in the development cycle of taking our existing technology and fully automating it through AI. All of the pieces that we have built over the last several years just really kind of needed to be logically strung together to know when to fire without needing a person to press a button. And in combination with that, we're also developing our agentic agent in our software to help our customers, where not only are they able to ask questions of the software, but the software will give them contextual feedback of how the claims process is going, anything that they should be looking out for, any problems to have. So we really feel by the end of this year that we'll be able to really reduce the human effort that is required even further than what we do today. When we think of efficiency, we like to think of how many claims can a full-time employee process per year utilizing our software. And we see most of our competitors are in the 3,000 to 4,000 claims per year space, 3,000 to 4,000 claims per full-time employee. Today in our software, we have users that produce 10 to 12,000 claims per full-time employee. And we think by the end of this year, we'll be at north of 20,000.
Okay. So definitely a big operational efficiency driver for you and the users of the software. I imagine that you are also not all that worried about other people building something similarly because of the other pieces of the puzzle, the connections with customers and those kinds of things that give you some moat against fast moving replicators.
Yeah, there's certainly some competitors in the space. By all indications, at this point in time, we're way ahead of them in the development cycle. Certainly have my eye out for the competition, but really but we're really focused on making the best experience for our customer. And I think that our work product will prove that out. And the support that we give to our customers far exceeds our competition. So I think it's a multitude of things that will help us stay ahead, even more so than just the straight out technology.
Okay, got it. And are there a lot of new entrants into the transportation or EMS market? Or what kind of structural shifts are you seeing in your end user market?
So in the end user market, there's not a whole lot of new entries. There's about 13,000 ambulance companies in the United States currently of various sizes. I mean, you have the small rural areas and all the way up to FDNY in New York City, right? So there's a wide range of customer sizes and types, ownership structures. What we are seeing though is among privately held companies, there is a consolidation going on of buying up other ambulance companies and being able to take advantage of some economies of scale, particularly around medical supplies, purchasing ambulances, things of that nature.
Okay, got it. And is then increased efficiency on the billing side one thing that they are more focused on now, I imagine?
Well, there was a study that was published that's been going on for the last couple of years that was commissioned by Medicare and was completed and written by the RAND Corporation and was published in December of last year, called the Ground Ambulance Data Collection System. And basically what this shows is that cost outpace revenue in every single ambulance company in the United States. They have to rely on local tax dollars, property tax, things like that to really be able to survive. And what this has really put in the forefront is a more push for efficiency to make this billing function cheaper, essentially. In the study, it shows that the average ambulance company is spending about 8% of their gross revenue on simply filing claims, the administrative burden of getting paid. And with our software, we believe that we can reduce their cost to 2% or less. It allows them to take that 6% and invest it in something that actually matters, something that saves lives. Don't pay for administrative burden. Pay for something that is to your core mission.
Yeah, okay, got it. Okay, well, hopefully we can get a few more companies signed up and get that margin improved for people. What does a sales cycle look like? I guess it depends a bit on the size of the customer you're talking about.
Well, it depends on the size of the customer and it depends some on the ownership type of the private company versus a government affiliated agency versus something that's hospital affiliated. So among those segments, we see private companies can be as less as of 90 days or so for a sales cycle. The government agencies can be 6 to 12 months, and hospitals, if anybody's familiar with dealing with hospitals, a lot of times that could be greater than 12 months.
Okay, got it. So you've got to be in the game for a while to get through those cycles.
Yeah, that's correct.
Is there, on the hospital side, seems to be a trend to have more, at least practitioners within the hospital umbrella. Is that true of ambulance companies as well?
In terms of having more affiliated with hospitals, hospitals are divesting themselves of ambulance companies and focusing more on their core inpatient type healthcare as
I see.
opposed to running ambulances.
Okay. But do your systems and the billing systems have to communicate with the later care providers? I'm just trying to get a sense of where in the stack of complicated communications you sit.
So typically the flow of data in the EMS industry is that you have a dispatch product, some sort of dispatch software that is then going to communicate with the medical record and maybe have some, initial pre-population of information in the medical record. Then the medical record is shared with the billing software, but then also shared with the hospitals because they want that record as part of the patient care. So that'll be transmitted over to the hospital, but in a parallel fashion, transmitted over to a software such as ours, where then we create a claim based off of that medical record and then transmit that to the third party payer.
Okay, got it. So you're on the receiving end of some complicated process of data, but is the data you're getting pretty standardized and easy to digest, or
Well, this is
all over
one
the
thing
place?
I was going to say, this is one thing the federal government has done well, I believe. And after 9/11, the government mandated a specific format for EMS medical records. And this was done initially for disease surveillance. So that way they would have an early warning that, hey, if somebody, 500 people called in Spartanburg, South Carolina today with flu-like symptoms, it would put up a red balloon. On the revenue cycle side of things for me is that it has allowed me to be able to create my software and receive medical records without having to vary from various vendor to vendor that offer that product. Because at the end, the data I consume is in that standard format.
Good. Well, that's one probably we don't have to worry about. It's still got to get the right information in the right format to the payers ultimately.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Now, then our software translates that into a way that the payer would provide a payment.
Okay. Got it. What are the biggest challenges then that you have been facing over the last couple of years with the market or with government regulation, or what's the challenges you've been grappling with?
I think for us, the biggest challenge that we had was really COVID. The lingering effects of COVID in the EMS industry far exceeded what I think a lot of people experience in other verticals. And just the nature of the EMS business is that there was so much focus on trying to keep EMTs and paramedics on duty, transporting patients. There was so much focus on having to maintain front end operations that the thought of switching out back office solutions was really just unpalatable, and just seemed to be immensely difficult. But we've seen that fundamentally change since late 2024. That's when we really feel like, hey, the market's back to a normal stability. And I think, so that was definitely some headwinds for us for quite a few years there. Conversely, I think, what's happening currently in the federal administration is that I think it's pretty clear that healthcare providers aren't going to be seeing more money. They're going to be getting less money. Certainly if the current legislation known as the Big Beautiful Bill passes through, it's pretty clear that there's going to be a lot of cuts in Medicaid, and that's going to trickle down to our customer base. But I think for us, it's going to only accelerate our sales cycle in the sense of you already needed to be more efficient. Now you're really going to have to be more efficient.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I guess that hopefully is good news for you. And if you can help them do that, then it's probably good news for everybody. How do you find the customers? Are they all hanging out in particular conferences or?
Yeah, the funny that this industry, it is a little antiquated in how lead generation goes, is that it really is the trade shows that first and foremost. We've tried various different marketing techniques. I've done served up ads, geofencing to serve up ads, all sorts of things. And at the end of the day, shaking somebody's hand at a trade show, sitting down with them at at one of the conference sessions, going to lunch with them and having conversations, that really is the driving factor for those leads. And then word of mouth after that.
Yeah, I imagine they probably know other EMS providers and compare notes on which software is not working for them at the moment. Yeah. Okay. So I guess on the more positive side, what has been the biggest successes you guys have had over the last 18 months? Is it people now being buyers?
I think some of the big successes that we have had is that we completed a very large licensing agreement with a PE-backed company that they're not able to sell our software and compete against us. They use it for their own billing practice. They bill for multiple EMS agencies. So we completed that, and that was a really great win. I think, seeing the influx over the last year of opportunities into our pipeline that are now being turned into closed sales and recognized revenue, I think is another big win for us. We've re-architected our tech stack and have really substantially improved our gross margins. Right now, we're running between 85% gross margin from our technology, and continue to look for optimizations there. And finally, I think our AI development has been a lot of fun to participate in. It's really exciting to see where we're going and the positive impact that we're going to be able to make for our customers.
And what is your sort of 5-year vision or whatever time frame vision from here?
Well, I would say that, I'm only 50 years old, got a lot of gas left in the tank, still having fun at this. So I don't have a exact exit strategy in mind. I feel like when the right time comes, it'll be pretty apparent. Having said that, I told you how I came to be in this offering this technology is that I'm really not the founder. I'm sort of the second founder, right? And so for me, it's not, my little baby that I need to see grow into adulthood and walk down the aisle. I think that, you know, when the right opportunity presents itself, and I think the endpoints of our organization to be attractive to a multitude of buyers. I think a strategic buyer, somebody else who's got multiple software offerings in the EMS space. I think a tech or healthcare tech aggregator would be interested in this. And finally, at our endpoints, I think that there's enough free cash flow that PE would be interested in our company as well.
Okay, yeah, lots of potential options and avenues ahead there. Is there anything that people listening to the show can do to help?
I don't know of anything that I would ask for other than if you know anybody in the ambulance industry, mention my name.
Okay, well, sure there are, so we'll figure something out. How has the transition to creating or growing an early stage company in Spartanburg gone?
Spartanburg is a really terrific community, in my opinion, and I really enjoy living here. The thing that I like to say about Spartanburg, which is not really, even though being from Charleston, never really experienced this in Charleston, certainly Austin didn't experience it, such a big city. Spartanburg, the price of admission in Spartanburg is your willingness to show up and participate. And you're welcomed with open arms. I'm proud to serve right now on 2 non-for-profit boards in the community. It's just been a terrific experience, and I highly recommend the upstate in Spartanburg specifically for anybody who's looking to start a business.
Okay, great. Well, on that positive note, I think we will hold it there. Rob, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to introduce us to what you're doing, and wish you the best of luck in getting some productive time at some conferences over the summer.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you for listening. Visit us at ventureinthesouth.com for a complete list of previous and future shows.